All right, Hockey Town, how's it going? I'm Matt, that's Forrest, and you are joining us for the first episode of Hockey Town Hangout, the newest and sickest Red Wings podcast. The regular season's just a little over a week away, a couple more preseason games left. We're going to evaluate where the squad's at heading into year 5 of the Yzer plan. Let's go.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Hockey Town Hangout.
Brings it in, scores! Oh, his first NHL goal is a beauty!
The sickest Detroit Red Wings podcast. It's gonna be sick.
So everybody, as Matt kind of talked about, we're gonna start off today talking, where the Yzer plan has come from our debacle of the 2019-2020 season, and how much talent the roster has at the current time. We're going to talk about what we think the Wings need to make the playoffs, who we think needs to come out and show out this season, and then last but not least, we're each going to make a prediction for wins and losses. Well, I take that back. Not wins and losses, but we're going to go points since that's a little bit easier. We'll choose a breakout player. And then we're even going to throw out some points for that player, and we'll track it throughout the season. Maybe something fun to track along as we go throughout the year here.
Dylan Larkin, hammer the over, baby.
Yep. Gotta love it. So
over.
Matt, let's start off talking about the 2019-2020 team. So for everybody, I'm sure that painfully remembers that season. That was the year where our beloved Red Wings finished last in the NHL. They had, I think it was 39 points that year. It was the lockout. Well, it was a shortened season. Thank goodness, due to COVID. Thank goodness. Listing off a couple of the top players from that team. So it was a young Dylan Larkin who had 53 points. Tyler Bertuzzi had 48, and Anthony Mantha had 38 points. To tell you the kind of depth that was on this team, our 7th leading scorer was Valtteri Filppula with 21 points.
Val Filppula getting a shout out on episode 1. Nice job.
I mean, what can I say? I love my Red Wing greats. That's for sure.
So can I cut you off a little bit? Just obviously we're going into year 5 of Steve Yzerman being the GM. This is kind of the time when people kind of start ramping up the expectations. And I think that's fair. Usually I think, in that 4, 5, 6 year range, I think that's fair time to start evaluating what that person's done. I think that's plenty of time to get a relevant sample size, so to speak. But people have been critical of Yzerman a little bit now, and some of the contracts he's signed to people. I mean, it's fair to criticize. I mean, the Ben Sherratt contract's not great. You look at Andrew Kopp's first year. I mean, that contract's not awesome. But again, we're not seeing the 6 and 7 year overpays to guys like Franz Nielsen and John Eriksson like we saw at the first attempt of the rebuild after Datsuk and Zetterberg were on their way out. So I think it's a different kind of animal now. Wouldn't you agree?
I would definitely agree with that, Matt. I mean, to be honest, the Ben Sherratt contract is obviously an albatross. As a little bit of a blast from the past, I'm just going to call him Jonathan Ericsson 2.0 for the sake of conversation, because he's just another human pylon out there. But as for the Kopp contract, I get that it wasn't good year 1, but he was injured for the first couple months. He didn't start off well. I'm, to be honest, a little nervous with how he's played in the preseason so far, but willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because it took him about a month to warm up last year. So I'm hoping that, by the time it flips to the real games that he's up and running,
So just out of curiosity, who was the top leading point getter defenseman wise on that 1920 team?
It was, I think it was Hronek. Yeah, Philip Hronek with 31 points. Second on the list is Madison Bowey.
So I just want to kind of go down the list of some of these guys who played defense for the Red Wings during that season. You talked about Madison Bowey. Madison Bowey is in the KHL. He's in Russia. He's not an NHL player anymore. Alex Biega, also in the AHL, not an NHL player anymore.
Right.
Our old pal Dennis Cholowski. All right. Jacob Chikrin, what could have been? He's in the AHL now. I think he's in the Islanders organization. Trevor Daley, he's retired. Jonathan Ericsson, Mike Green, they're retired. Patrick Nemeth just signed a contract to play fucking pro hockey in Switzerland. And then you have Gustav Lindstrom, who just got traded. You have Dylan McElrath, who we saw the other night in the preseason. He'll be in the AHL like he's used to being in. And I just want to stress this point enough, too. I haven't talked about Danny DeKeyser yet, okay? Danny DeKeyser was a top 4 defenseman on that team, night in and night out, all right? And I've met Danny DeKeyser. He's a good dude. I don't have anything bad to say about Danny DeKeyser, but Danny DeKeyser is literally a realtor today. And that guy was on our NHL Blue Line 4 years ago. So what does that say? The guy is selling houses, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great way to make a living. I'm not here to shit on anybody. But when you go from playing pro hockey in the NHL, not just pro hockey, NHL pro hockey, to selling houses in 4 years, I mean, what does that say about what Steve Yzerman inherited on day one?
It was an absolute dumpster fire. And
yeah, man, that's not good. Like, I can ask anybody, they'll agree it's not good. I don't need to ask very many people.
No, I mean, they were on pace for the lowest point total in NHL history that season if it was a full season. So thank goodness it was a shortened one with COVID, you know. We got saved by that.
Yeah, God, I didn't want to watch 10 more games of that shit anyway.
You would have had to pay me. It was unwatchable. I mean, just look at these plus minuses. Athanasiou, minus 45. Filppula, minus 42. Mike Green, minus 32. Shutdown defenseman Luke Glendening, minus 29.
Does that page you're on have the goal differential of the team at the end of the year by chance?
Let me see if I can find this.
Because it's got to be abysmally low.
Yeah. So they were so league average was 208 goals for, 208 goals against. Red Wings had a negative 123 goal differential that season. They only scored 142 goals and they gave up 265. So they scored about 75% less than league average, and they gave up about 20% more than league average.
So you said 142 goals for?
Correct.
And they played like 70 games, so they're scoring like 2 goals a game.
71 games. Yeah, so exactly 2 goals.
Exactly 2. Yeah, 2 goals in the NHL night in and night out. It might win you some games here and there, which you see by the final record there. But I mean, good Lord, that is just, I mean, and you talk about like NHL and tanking and how people don't tank. Like, I mean, how could you, like the adjustments that Steve Yzerman did make to that roster that offseason, because that's when he did sign like Nemeth and Filppula and a couple other supplemental guys. Like, how can you argue they weren't tanking? Because I think that was the Lafreniere draft, right? 2020.
It was. Yes, it was.
Yeah. So, and again, like same thing, you know, lottery luck ceases to exist when you're a Detroit Red Wings fan, and for better or for worse, that's just the way it is. But, you know, you look at some of these drafts that Yzerman has put together. I mean, you can't argue the guy hammers his first round picks so far, at least so it seems. The only one that's kind of on the fence still to me is Marco Kasper, but he's only 19 years old. So I think I need to pump the brakes on that, and everyone should too. But like Seider, Calder Trophy. I mean, Lucas Raymond, I mean, he's put on like 10 pounds of muscle or something like that, and he's looking like a game changer playing with Larkin and DeBrincat. Simon Edvinsson, he's probably going to start the year in Grand Rapids if I had to guess. But that's just because of the veteran depth. Yeah, unfortunately, but that's because of the veteran depth he brought in. And I think some competition's good. I don't think we're at the point in the rebuild anymore where we just hand ice time to kids. I think they do have to earn it now, which I think is an encouraging step that people don't really talk about.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, Kasper, I think it's a little early for him. He's in his, second year after he was drafted, and he was playing against pros in the SHL last year, and he was putting up like half a point a game, which is really good, and playing good two-way stuff. So, it's just a matter of, can he transition it to the AHL? And I think he's proven that he can. I mean, he was out there playing against the Maple Leafs last year and throwing the body around and looking tough. So I was enjoying it. I think he's got the nastiness, the snarl in there. And hey, if he only becomes a 55-point center like JT Comfer, and we just start stacking up middle six centers down the middle, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. At the end of the day, I think a lot of people compare this team to Seattle. And in my opinion, at the top, I think we have better players. So I think that there is a path forward, and Seattle's the big comp, but we'll see with the depth and how it is. And we don't even have finalized line combinations yet. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that there, Coach.
My guess is they keep 23 with Larkson Brinks to start the year. My guess is
so.
They don't.
Do you have any concerns about how they're going to play on the half boards, how they're going to cycle the puck? It's a couple small guys there on the wings.
you talking 5-on-5? Are you speaking?
Yes.
So I think Dylan Larkin is going to have to be the straw that stirs the drink on that line, like he's used to being. I think the difference now is there's more skill around him. I mean, he's been playing with Lucas Raymond for a couple of years now, and again, Lucas Raymond is, he's just getting to the point in his life where he can buy his own ginger ale, for crying out loud. I mean, he's got a ton of great hockey left. So the size really doesn't bother me too much. Some of the preseason games I watched, DeBrincat's actually kind of sneaky good on the boards, using kind of his body to, box guys out and protect the puck. I'm sure there's going to be some times where he gets kind of run over a little bit, but when you're what is he, 5'7", 5'8", considering he's that small and how well again, I haven't watched Alex DeBrincat a ton. I watched him more when he played junior in Erie than when he played in Chicago and Ottawa, but I think it's going to work out just fine. I think it might take some time. Like you saw at the beginning of last year, I think it's going to take some time with all these new faces just to kind of gel a little bit. It wouldn't surprise me if they started out, playing 500 hockey for the first, 8 to 12 games. But then so if you have that line, if that's your first line with Dylan Larkin and a couple of small skilled wingers, then you have JT Comfort, I think, is your 2C over Andrew Kopp. And that Rasmussen line with David Perron and him, doesn't look too bad either. That's a legit second line, I think. And Michael Rasmussen, since he's moved to the wing, dude, I mean, thank God Ken Holland didn't screw up the 2014 and the 2017 draft like he did every other friggin' draft. Because if we didn't have Dylan Larkin and Michael Rasmussen right now, holy fuck, man.
We would be nowhere. And I'm sure we'll probably talk about Rasmussen a little bit later with our breakout players, because I think he's one that a lot of people have circled as somebody that's going to take a step forward. I mean, we've seen him increase his point total each of the last 3 years, and I definitely think he's primed for a breakout. Last year we saw some chemistry with him and Kopp before he went down, and to be honest, I've been super impressed with how him and Comfort have played together so far in the preseason. So I think they have instant chemistry. And, you toss Perron on there, a guy that can handle the puck, have the puck on his stick, just an all-around, I would say, high-skilled player. I think that's about as formidable of a second line as we've had in, dare I say, a decade.
No, definitely the deepest top six they've had since they've been a playoff team, for sure. And even at the end of that streak, that top six wasn't that deep. So, yeah. And then if you move down to the bottom six, I mean, third line, Andrew Kopp, Daniel Sprong. And if it were me calling the shots, I'd put Nate Danielson on that wing, but I don't know if that's really going to happen. I would give him a shot to play a few games with the big boys, but you could put Klim Kostin on that line too if you needed to. Robbie Fabry could slot in on that third line wing. I think
Fab would be one of the best third liners in the league.
Well, if he could stay healthy, if it's not a lower body, it's an upper body apparently. So I wish him the best. I don't have anything bad to say about Robbie Fabry, but. Yeah, man, he can't afford another injury, at least anything super serious, that's for sure.
So I know you mentioned that if it was you as the coach, you would have Danielson on the third line. I mean, obviously, I think we've all walked away impressed with him. What have your thoughts been on him so far?
I think we have the opportunity 5 years from now when we do a 2023 NHL redraft in 2028. I think Nate Danielson might crack that top 5, even that top 3. I'm really impressed with his poise on the ice. He just always kind of seems to be in the middle of it. And yeah, I don't know what it is, but some of these really good players in the long run that have really long careers, just the puck seems to find them. Like Datsuk is a good one that comes to mind for Red Wings fans. Just always kind of just seem to be in the middle of the play, whether it's on the forecheck or on the back check or, cycling the puck or getting pucks to the net, traffic to the net. I think he has super, super high hockey IQ. And I don't know if I can't remember what preseason game it was, but Ken and Mick talked about how Yzerman and co interviewed Bedard at the draft solely to ask him about Nate Danielson. And I think that's such a above average decision to do that not a lot of GMs would think about. And obviously everyone knows the quote by Bedard at this point that Nate Danielson was the hardest to play against over in the WHL and junior. Ultimately, I don't think he'll make the opening night roster this year, but I think at this point, what we've seen, and especially if he goes back to Brandon and lights it up again, because that's the only place he can go. He can't go to Grand Rapids. He can't go to Toledo. He can only play for Detroit or his junior team, which is Brandon right now, in the dub. But yeah, no, I'm super impressed with him. Again, a draft where Yzerman goes up to the podium and we're expecting, one of a couple of names, and he kind of goes off the board a little bit to all the commoners like us. But man, he's looking like a good value pick for 9th overall. So, and I was a big critic too on the Twitter account. Like, I have rebuild fatigue just as bad as anyone else. I didn't want a 9th overall pick. I wanted a fucking difference maker. I wanted Connor Bedard just as bad as anyone else, but to see how he's doing so far, and again, it's preseason. I know you can't put a ton of stock into that. You have to take it with a grain of salt, but these are guys who are pretty much they're either too young to play in the NHL and they got to go back to junior, or these are pro hockey players. Like, the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins would dust the Brandon Wheat Kings. I don't care who's playing for them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, these are grown men he's playing against. So I think you have to acknowledge what he's done and give him his tip of the cap. And if it were me, it would be a hard decision for sure. It would definitely be a really hard decision. And if it were me, I would give him the shot. I'd give him the 8 or 9 game tryout and let him see how he does. But I think we should be really encouraged. And I don't think it's really that much of a far-fetched scenario where training camp 2024, he's almost expected to make the roster opening night.
Well, I think they're trying to push his ELC a year, to be honest, because I'm pretty sure that Casper is going to line up with Copp's deal expiring, and I'm pretty sure that if Danielson gets pushed until next year, then it will coincide with Comfort's deal coming off the book. So I think that's a lot of what Steve's trying to line up right now. He's trying to bridge the gap, getting to those young guys, because 5 years down the road, you're looking at Larkin and Casper and Danielson down the middle. And I think the interesting point to me about Danielson being so hard to play against is we're seeing that on a night in and night out basis. Connor Bedard is an insane hockey player, and we got to see that firsthand in one of the preseason games, and I was blown away. And for him to come out, skate circles around everybody as an 18-year-old and say that Nate Danielson was the toughest person he played against, that's the guy that I want on my team. I want somebody that's going to be 100%. A pest, and our pest, that like Brad Marchand is one of the hatest players in the league, but the Bruins love him. There's always somebody on your team that you love and everybody else can't stand.
And I'm afraid Tyler Bertuzzi is about to take that role for Red Wings fans.
I was thinking the same thing too.
You see, he played like his first preseason game like a week or so ago, and like the Toronto media is like, "Look at this guy. He got no tape on his stick. He's got the tongues on his skates are flipped up. This guy looks like a real greaseball." And it's like, yeah, dude, have you ever seen a picture of Tyler Bertuzzi in your fucking life?
Yeah, definitely.
Anyways, if the Leafs don't get to at least the conference final this year, they should just really relocate that organization, because that's a joke with how loaded they are, dude. It's like inexcusable at this point. And with Vasilevsky out a couple months, Boston has lost a bunch of key pieces. Like, if you don't win this division and win it by a lot, with a lot of momentum going into the playoffs, dude, I don't know, man. But
yeah,
that's the Toronto Maple Leafs, and this is a Red Wings podcast, and we do not give a shit what they're doing.
True that. All right, so let's wrap up on the forwards. Let's talk defensemen for this year. So I'm pretty sure we've got a good idea of who's going to be on the top pairing, and our golden boy Seider and Wallman out there. I think they had 52% goals for last year, 62% or 52% Corsi, and that was by far the best partner that Seider's had since he's been dragging around Dan DeKeyser and Ben Chiarot for the last couple years. That it's good to see him play with somebody that allows him to succeed and do what he does best. I mean, for me, I've liked how he's played the body this year. And I think that if he can continue on that and kind of be the leader in setting the tone defensively, I think this team's overall going to play better team defense, and we're going to be in a better spot from, giving up less chances and having an easier time for our goalies in general.
Yeah, so I think for any rebuilding team, one of the biggest pressing questions is who's going to be our top pair defenseman. And I mean, that is a question that keeps general managers up at night. Like that's a decision where if you get it wrong, it could cost you your job. Like it's a real thing that people think about is what am I going to do on my top D pair in the National Hockey League? And the Red Wings have that box checked right now, which is such an awesome thing to be able to say. I mean, Mo Seider, he had a bit of a down year last year compared to, his rookie year and winning the Calder and all that hype. It's natural. The sophomore slump is also a very real thing. I'm not worried about Mo Seider at all. He looks even better on the power play, quarterbacking that top unit, which I think is sneaky good. That could be top 10 in the league. And Jake Wallman, dude, Jake Wallman's skating is so underrated. Like his skating sometimes, like it's not all the time, but like he'll do like these maneuvers in the O zone or in the D zone, trying to initiate the breakout and manipulate the forechecker or the defender with his feet. It's disgusting. He's so underrated. And the fact that he's locked at, what's his cap hit? Like it's less than 4, isn't it?
I thought it was like 3.5.
Yeah. Like
3 years.
Unreal job by Yzerman finding that guy to play with Mo Seider. Because I think Wallman's only 27 or 28.
Yeah, and we traded him for who did we trade him for? We traded him to the Blues.
That was part of the Nick Leddy deal, wasn't it? Or maybe in one of the other St.
I think
Louis
you're
trades.
right.
There were a few of them.
Nick Leddy deal.
But either way, dude, I mean, the top pair, check. Like, I mean, you got it solved. Like, that's awesome. Now it's who can be the supplemental pieces in the bottom 4.
All right. So who do you have on that second pairing then?
I mean, if it were me, I would put Shane Gostisbehere and Olli Maatta together on that pair. And I'll tell you why. Shane Gostisbehere is on record saying he doesn't mind playing on his offside, on his offhand. So they're both lefties. And I think if they don't mind, I mean, Olli Maatta, I think, is an awesome kind of a calm veteran presence back there, good defensive defender, doesn't have a bad, first breakout pass, has the ability to skate it up if he needs to a little bit. And I really like Gostisbehere's offensive potential. I mean, you're potentially adding 40 points on the blue line by bringing him in. So I think that could be a good match there. I'm assuming it'll probably be Gostisbehere and Hall, if that's where you were forcing me to put my money. But I would put him with Maatta just because I trust Maatta a little bit more. But then you create the dilemma on your third pair where you have Jeff Petrie, you have Ben Sherratt, and you have Justin Hall. So I really don't think it's going to be Ghost and Maatta, but that's what I would do.
Yeah. I think for me, if I was coaching, I'd probably go Maatta on the second pair with Petrie. To be honest, I think Petrie's on my short list for bounce back candidates this year. I mean, he was sneaky good in Pittsburgh. And, obviously, in my opinion, I feel like a lot of people can be successful in Pittsburgh, but he's showed over multiple stops that he can do it. Love the fact that he's a Michigan guy. I think he's primed for, increased ice time and more opportunities. And I think he has a sneaky chance. Like, if something happens to Gostisbehere, I think he could slot in on a power play too. I think he's got that kind of potential to, maybe put up 30, 40 points on the back end and be sneaky in that second pairing. But I really don't know what they're looking at for the second pairing, to be honest. But I like the discussion here on this.
Yeah, I mean, who's slotted in to be the 7th D then? So if you got Seider or Wallman.
We're gonna assume that Petrie and Maatta are gonna play, right?
Yep, so that's 4.
I'm assuming that Hall will play.
Hall and Sherratt would be 6.
So then probably Gostisbehere would be out in that scenario.
Shit, yeah, Gostisbehere. Yeah, I mean, it's a good problem to have. I mean, there's going to be a real veteran NHL defenseman as a 7th D on this team, which, again, we just talked about the 1920 D squad and how we got KHL guys and realtors trying to play defense for us. And now we're going to have like a legit NHL defenseman who's a healthy scratch, unless they dress 11 and 7, which I guess, they've been known to do from time to time. Yeah. But the defensive depth, again, is as good as it's been since I can remember, for sure.
Well, we've had so many injuries up and down the lineup the last couple of years. It can't hurt to have, a 13th guy in the forward or a 7th defenseman that can step in at a moment's notice. And, I think we have guys in Grand Rapids that are chomping at the bit too. Yeah, I agree. It's a good problem to have. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I like where our D's at. And yeah, like you said, like if there's a couple injuries and we need to call up a guy like Edvinsson, I mean, if you get that opportunity and you're Simon Edvinsson, you got to run with it for sure.
Man, I would love for him to be able to get into the lineup this year. And I think he's just a budding superstar. I think that he could benefit from playing time in the NHL this season the same way Mo did when he was a 20-year-old. I think it'd be good to just get him out there, get the experience, use this as a learning year. Say, hey, go out there, make your mistakes. We're trying for the playoffs, but we play in the toughest division in hockey. We're going to go out there, give it our best shot and see what happens.
But does he get more out of being like a 1 or a 2D in Grand Rapids though?
I mean, to be honest, if he comes up to the NHL, I would put him on the second pairing immediately, personally.
Sure. Yeah,
I think he's the second best left-handed defense. Well, I would argue Mata. But if you're playing Simon Edvinsson, you're looking at the future. You want to develop people, so Edvinsson should be getting those minutes over Mata in the first place, in my opinion.
It's a fair argument for sure. What about the goalies, dude?
I'm rolling. I mean, obviously Husso's at the top, so still rolling with Husso. I think that he is going to benefit from a better defense in front of him. He's going to benefit from a full year of Seider and Wallman. And just overall, I think Mata on the second pairing, Petrie. I mean, as much as I like to rip on Sherrod, he is very valuable defensively, moving people out of the way, being strong against the boards. So he does add some value too. But I really think that the defense is what needs to be improved on this team. I think that our goalies got left out to dry on maybe not a nightly basis, but there was a lot of games where I was like, wow, I can't believe they gave up that many goals.
Yeah, and listen, if Ben Sherratt was on a deal with like a $2.25 million cap hit, like I don't think people would really complain about him that much.
Yeah.
And like to like new hockey fans, like your cap hit, like how much money you're making per year, the average annual value of your contract, that plays a role in the way people perceive you as a player. Because if you're taking up a significant portion of a team's cap and you're not performing either, it doesn't matter whether you're a forward or a defenseman, if you're not performing offensively or by the defensive metrics that professional teams use, you're viewed as just a logjam. Like you're taking up space for somebody who might be younger, better, definitely fucking cheaper. And so it's crazy to me with these guys when they sign these big contracts. And you can even look at it in other sports. I mean, look at the contract that Joe Burrow signed in the offseason and look how he is playing for the Cincinnati Bengals right now. It's just all, and you can even look back at the Red Wings, dude. I mean, the same thing happened with Jimmy Howard. The same thing happened with Justin Abdelkader. The same thing happened with Jonathan Ericsson. I mean, it's just nuts. The guys get, and like, I get it to an extent, the human element, the security of it all. Like, well, I've got this 6-year deal. It's got a full no friggin' move clause. I'm not going anywhere unless I sign off on it. What incentive do you have to keep trying every day, especially in professional sports where it's such a mental fucking grind every minute of every hour of every fucking day? Like, what's the incentive to keep going if you're locked up like that?
Well, for me, I think a lot of it comes down to, your values and how you're built. I think that's why somebody like Casper is so high. He has such a high, great work ethic that, everybody notices that. They see the youngster being the first person in and the last person out. I think that's where, once you reach that point, you're looking for guys that are going to be leaders, lunch pail guys like the Pistons back in the day, going to work Pistons. You want guys that are going to come in, take about their business, and be professional about it. And that's, I don't know all those names that you gave earlier, but yeah, second, all of them signed their contracts, which were A, way too long in the first place, and B, way too much money. Yeah, they started slacking, and hey, one thing led to another. Here we are.
I remember the summer of 2016, there was all that hype that Stamkos might come to the Red Wings. But like a lesser known thing, like Darren Helm was on his way out, dude. Like he was testing the market. He was on his way out, talking to other teams. And then out of nowhere, you check Twitter that morning in July of 2016, whenever it was he signed that contract, and Ken Holland locked him up for another 5 or 6 years. After he deserved no contract at that point. He deserved no fucking contract at that point. And Ken Holland was like, well, I need a bottom 6 forward. Here, just sign you up for 5 or 6 fucking years.
It was something else. I mean, he was handing out no trade clauses and, multi-year contracts like it was Halloween candy, honestly.
Yeah. Anyone checked in on Darnell Nurse's contract lately? Jeez Louise.
Hey, not learning from his mistakes, that's for sure.
So switching gears back to Detroit Red Wings general managers who know what the fuck they're actually doing. Steve Yzerman signed 2 veteran goalies in the offseason, James Reimer and Alex Lyon, duking it out currently for the backup spot. Do you see any possibility where the team carries 3 goalies on the 23-man roster?
Honestly, up until a couple days ago, I really didn't see any chance of it happening. But now that I've been thinking about it and seeing how there's a couple teams out there that, like Tampa, for example, that could use another goaltender, and both Lyon and Reimer having to go through waivers, I think that becomes more and more of a possibility.
Yep.
Because as we know, not every team has 2 quality goaltenders. We haven't even had one for a long time. So they're like gold. So I think for that reason alone, I would carry 3 and I would just start shopping one of them.
It's not a bad idea for sure. And I think the limited preseason action I've seen of both, I kind of like Lyon a little bit more.
Okay.
It just seems to kind of track the puck a little bit better. I mean, I know he's younger than Reimer by about 4 or 5 years, and he's obviously coming off a season where he really played a vital role in Florida being able to get into the playoffs. Obviously, Bob stole the show once they got there, but you could make a legitimate argument that if Alex Lyon isn't on that team, Florida doesn't even get there in the first place.
Legitimate argument. Without Alex Lyon, they don't even make the playoffs, straight up.
Yeah.
No argument for me on that one. If Alex Lyon doesn't come in and save their bacon the last 10 games of the season, the Panthers don't make the playoffs and Bobrovsky doesn't get a chance to redeem himself. Because let's be honest, I mean, he hasn't not played well in the regular season in a Panthers jersey.
Yeah. Yeah, no one saw that coming. Nobody. So I like where your head's at there. So if you break that down, obviously if you take 3 goalies, then you can only take 20 skaters. Right. So obviously, if it were me, I think the most common sense thing to do would be 13 forwards and 7D. I wouldn't go 12 and 8. I don't think that's a smart move at all.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that.
If you have 13 forwards, you got DeBrincat, Larkin, Raymond. You got Rasmussen, Comfer, Perron, that's 6. Sprong, Kopp, and Costin 9, Veleno 10, Fabry 11, Fisher 12, and Bergeron 13.
Yeah,
those are 13. So, I mean, it's a decent roster. I mean, it's not. Will it be a playoff team? I'm not sure. I really, really hope so. But I mean, this is the best shot we've had in a while, and I think some criticism to Yzerman at this point is fair. But I think we really need to see how this team does start to finish before we can really arrive at any conclusions that are meaningful. I think we really need to see how this team in 2023, 2024 does.
Yeah, and I think everybody needs to pump the brakes a little bit on Steve because, as we know, you're drafting kids that are 18 years old in the NHL, and the average kid that gets drafted, it's 3 to 4 years after they get drafted where they go to the NHL. So it is not a quick process. This is not the NBA where you can turn over a roster in 2 seasons. No, it takes time, and unfortunately it has taken time. We've been shedding contracts, taking on deals for people and taking up picks and salary dumps, and it's been smart. Steve's had to, weaponize his cap space because that's really the only thing we've had that anybody's cared about. Now, nobody's looking to us to pick up anybody for the most part. I mean, Bertuzzi maybe last year, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think he's done a really, really good job managing the salary cap. Like you think back to Ken Holland when he was we had no cap space and we had no fucking players. Now we have real players. How will they do is yet to be seen, but we have a roster full of real players, which we did not have 4 or 5 years ago when he got here. And
definitely,
I mean, you are giving Dylan Larkin the best winger he's ever played with at this point in his professional career. Mm-hmm. You're giving Alex DeBrincat the best center I think he's ever played with in his career. I think that first line, if Lucas Raymond can step it up and be a 60, 70-point guy, that first line has the potential to be special, man. And they're all still in their 20s.
I mean, let's not forget, Larkin had 30 goals last year. DeBrincat had 27. If we just have them stay right at that number, there's a good chance that Lucas Raymond is going to chip on a bunch of those if he plays with them all season. I don't see any reason why he can't clear the 60-point plateau this year with good health, of course.
If that line stays together start to finish and stays healthy, do you think they could crack 100 goals?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the level of passing that we've had in the preseason from a Red Wings team in at least 7 to 8 years. We'll talk about the power play, I'm sure, at a later point, but I have been blown away with the passing on the power play. Like, there is intent. They are trying to set up plays, whereas for the last 5, 6, 7 years, they just passed the puck to pass the puck, and they were really just trying to kill time. They didn't really have a plan of attack. But I want to segue into, what is needed from our Wings to make the playoffs. We're talking about how, we don't know exactly if they're going to make it. They had 80 points last year. It was 92 points with the Panthers to make the playoffs. So that's 12 points if we go off of last year's numbers. And honestly, I think 92 is lower than it usually is on an average year. So let's say, 15 points for the sake of argument to get into the playoffs. What do you need to see from the Wings in order to get 15 points more out of this team than last year?
So when we talked about doing this discussion, this specific topic, my hockey nerd kind of freaked out a little bit. And I went back to 2015, 2016, and I looked at the 8 seed in the East, who that was, in the second wild card spot. I didn't do the 2 COVID years that were affected because those kind of threw off the point numbers a little bit. So I've got 6 seasons of teams, and I did the averages of the following 5 categories. Their total points, their points percentage, their goal differential, their power play percentage, and their penalty kill percentage.
Oh gosh, this is more math than you've probably done in years.
Yeah, I know. It took me a while. I had to get my abacus out. So the averages of those teams, the average point total is 96.3. So you're kind of right on there with the 15 more points. Okay. So 95 to 96. Their points percentage was 58.7%. So getting points in 58.7% of their games. The goal differential was plus 14.8, so about plus 15. Their power play percentage was 20.1%. And their penalty kill was 81%. Okay. So now all those same categories, I'm going to read what the 22-23 Wings finished with in all those categories. You mentioned the points already, 80 points. So they're about eight regulation wins away from that average. Their points percentage was 48.8%. So they're about 10% off that average. Okay. Which again, if you can find a way to get more of those 1-goal games to overtime, if you can find a way to win some more of those overtime games, I think they had like 10 or 11 OT losses last year. I don't think that's an unreasonable ask. The goal differential, though, is where it gets a little tough because their goal differential last year was minus 38. So by my math, that's 53 more goals that they need to hit that average of plus 15.
Well, I would be interested to see, the splits from the first half or, pre-trade deadline versus post-trade deadline. Cause they sure. blew up the team after the trade deadline and they, played like a team that had been blown up at the trade deadline. So I think that can kind of skew the numbers a little bit. And I don't know. I mean, for me, I look at a couple people. I mentioned Petrie earlier. I think Petrie has an outside shot to be a second pair defenseman. I know Toronto fans hate Hull. I'm willing to give him a chance, but I don't like what I've seen with Hull and Sherratt so far through the preseason. So I doubt that I'm going to like it in the regular season. But Petrie, go ahead.
We give you a fair shot to put on a Red Wings jersey and play good hockey. We'll give you a fair shot. Yeah. I mean, at least when I'm tweeting on the account, I really don't talk shit about anybody unless I've seen years of fucking whatever the fuck I'm watching from them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think we're that bad about talking shit about anybody,
I mean, just sometimes if you put that winged wheel on and you look like you don't belong, Red Wings diehards got to call you out.
Yeah, I mean, we gave Ben Sherrod a full year, and here we are.
Man, I was so excited for him to play with Mo Sider too, and it just never worked out.
Well, because
Anyway.
he was so good with Shea Weber. I mean, but we all know that Shea Weber carried him. You know.
Yeah, Shea Weber, R.I.P. Not really, but but the power play though. So the average power play, getting back to this playoff discussion, the average power play of the playoff teams was 20.1%. Last year, the Red Wings power play was 21.1%. So their power play is actually a little bit above average.
Wow, and I believe that's one of the higher percentages we've had. I mean, I remember our power play was pretty atrocious for a while there.
Yeah, and everyone, well, not everyone. I don't think a lot of people even understand or know this, but Dylan Larkin was tied for 10th in power play goals last year in the league.
I'm going to be honest. I think Dylan Larkin is one of the most underrated first centers in the NHL. I mean, the guy.
What you're saying, dude. People on Twitter are going to scream at you and tell you he's a second line center, dude.
You know what? I don't care at this point. Dylan Larkin is a top half center in the NHL. I'm sick of people on Twitter saying that, oh, he's not good enough for a championship team. There are 3, maybe 4 franchise players in the NHL. And if you don't have the first pick, you're not getting one of them. So, you know, if you want to cry and complain that Dylan Larkin isn't a franchise player, sure. But he's the best we got. So put up or shut up is what I want to say. He's the best we got. You know, maybe we got Danielson coming along and being something better in a couple years, but like, you know, just dumping on him over and over. He's going to be here for a long time. Dylan Larkin is our captain, and I don't know. Oh, captain, my captain. I've always been a big fan of him.
No, I'm with you. Our account is a Dylan Larkin Stan account, dude. I love Dylan Larkin. He's an awesome person. I think he really cares about being the captain of the Red Wings, which is obviously so important considering, you know, the 3 people you're following in holding that role. But yeah, he's a good dude. He cares a ton, and he keeps getting better every year. Honestly, statistically, like he was only a couple of points, maybe even 1 point away from being a true point per game player last year. And he's adding Alex DeBrincat. I mean, I'll say it. I think Dylan Larkin's going to be a 90 to 100 point player this year. Like I said it, I'm on record. I genuinely believe that. If you're talking over or under 89.5 points, I'm taking the over. It might not be.
Okay, so if you're taking the over on Larkin 89.5. What are you taking on the DeBrincat over under like 35.5 goals?
I'm going to take the slight under on that one. I think he's in the 30 to 35 range. Okay. I don't think he's going to get back to 40 goals right away. But I mean, even still, if you're putting a 30 to 35 goal scorer with Larkin Ray, like that's a big deal.
Huge deal. Like you mentioned earlier, he's never had anybody even in that conversation of DeBrincat. He's the first, I would say, true goal scorer that Larks has ever had to flank him.
Yeah, easily, for sure. But yeah, so I mean, if the Red Wings 16 more points, 10% higher points percentage per game, 53 more goals, and the power play is fine and getting better. So like that part's, you know, we're cooking there. And the penalty kill, the average for the playoff teams in the wild card 2 spot in the East was 81%. And last year the Red Wings were at 78.5. So they're not that far off on that either. And they get Rasmussen back too, and he's a hell of a penalty killer.
Well, that dude just has. I mean, he takes up half the
JT Comfort
defensive zone. I mean, that guy's reach. I mean, I just picture Rasmussen and Soderblom playing on the penalty kill with like Sider and Sherratt. I mean, those guys' sticks are everywhere. Yeah. How do you get any pass around the floor with them?
Yeah, Soderblom, another guy I think is going to unfortunately spend a lot of the year in Grand Rapids. But I mean, with a guy like that, I mean, he's such like a unicorn player, dude. I mean, they don't make them like that, you know? So if we need to take our time a little bit with him, I really don't have a problem with that.
Well, you can't teach size. And, you know, we had Rasmussen, we kept him in the NHL that last year when he was 19. We didn't send him back to juniors, and he had a slow progression. You know, I don't know if necessarily that was the best thing for his development. So I'm encouraged to say, hey, let Soderblom spend some time down there. I think he's someone that could definitely use some marinating in Grand Rapids. He just needs time to – it's a different game over here, especially for a big guy like that. I'm sure the ice gets much, much smaller for him. So I think that as he continues to get those reps in year 2 in North America, I think that he'll position himself to fight for a roster spot next year.
Yeah, no, I think honestly, dude, like all BS aside, like super encouraged where the team's at right now. Now, obviously, we got to stay healthy. We got to perform. There's a lot of what ifs that go up in the air, but I'm really encouraged by how long they hung in the fight last year. I mean, they were really right up into it, the trade deadline. Those Ottawa games were right before the deadline. So they were right there at a key point and, elected to sell one more year, which ultimately I think was the right call. And I think the measuring stick truly for this team, like if you really want to look at this team in an objective way, I don't think the measuring stick of success should be, did they make the playoffs? Yes or no. It's black and white like that. I really don't think that's it.
Bang.
I think it really needs to be, how long are they in the fight? Like, are we at April 1st and we're down to the last 3, 4, 5 games of the regular season and they're within reach or they're there? You know what I mean? Like that would be a super positive thing if you ask me.
I'm with you. I don't think that the playoffs is the bar this season. I think playing meaningful games into the last month or two, I'm with you on that.
Yep.
We need to be playing those games with Ottawa in March and stealing one this season and not being sent packing with a quick clean sweep up in Ottawa. That still frustrates me.
Yeah, dude. But hey, it's that hope of the new season, man.
Yeah, we're on the cusp. Whenever you get some free agent signings, you have some young blood fighting for playoff spots. It's exciting. It's fun to get to talk about this stuff.
Makes you want to just get absolutely buried in Verner's on a Saturday afternoon.
Oh man, get me a ginger ale. Okay, Matt. To wrap things up on our podcast today, so let's get your prediction for the season, a points total, one breakout player on the wings, and let's just say a point total for them.
So we've talked about last year. I think they won 35. I think they were 35, 37, and 10. I think that was their final record. If I'm off a little bit, just don't come for me too hard in the comments.
I think you're spot on.
But I think a realistic expectation is somewhere between 89 and 93 points. I think that's a realistic.
Wow, you're getting us a range here. Look at you go.
Yeah, 89 to 93. I'm not gonna give myself one number. I'm gonna give myself a little range. But I think so. If you're let's just say 90, that's 10 more points, right? So any combination of whatever that is, a few more wins and a couple more overtime wins or whatever. I think that's realistic. I think with the depth and the stronger veteran, calmer, poised presence on the blue line in front of Husso or Reimer or Lyon or whoever, I think you can easily get 10 more points out of adding those things. Again, you got to stay healthy. You got to develop the chemistry. Things got to click with the power play and the penalty kill. But I think that's realistic. If they're at the trade deadline and they're close. I don't know what kind of additions you make. I mean, obviously it's going to depend, right? That's like 6 months away. Yeah. But if we're at the trade deadline and we're in a wild card spot or sniffing it at least, I think you got to consider maybe bringing in a piece, right?
Interesting. Okay.
Because I think
maybe not a blockbuster per se.
Yeah, no. I wouldn't try and make any type of big splash, but like, again, some people might not like this, but if Patrick Kane wants to come play with DeBrincat and Larkin, like I know he's not like a defensively responsible player, and I know he's pushing 40, but like if Patrick Kane wants to come play in Detroit and he only wants $1 million or $2 million, like is it really? Yeah, I mean, why not? Like you put yourself in this position to have cap flexibility, and a future first ballot Hall of Famer, 3-time Cup champion, Conn Smythe winner wants to play. Hey, I want to come play for you. Like that. I mean, you have to really think about that, especially if the price isn't too high.
Well, if you have a chance to go make the playoffs, you want to sign the people that can help you get to the playoffs. So I just think it would be a no-brainer to bring him in if the rumors are true and he seriously wants to come here. I think that would be a no-brainer. Again, so you're saying 89 to 93, Matt. I need a number out of you. Give me something specific, please.
I'll go 90. Let's say 90.
Love it. All right, so 90 points this season. I'm going to add this question in: playoffs or no playoffs with those 90?
I don't think it's enough. I think it's enough to get you like the 15th or 16th overall pick, but I don't think it's enough to get you in the playoffs, unfortunately.
Playoffs?
Yeah, right, exactly. Throw that soundbite in there.
All right, so 90 points, no playoffs. Who's your breakout player, and what's your stat line for them? Let's go point total.
Well, it's no secret at this point, but I just love a big Rass, man. Like just a big, juicy, humongous Rass. Just love that shit. Michael Rasmussen, dude, he's coming at you for 50 points this year. I'm telling you right now, if he stays healthy and he's a staple in that top 6, I think 50 points is realistic for Michael Rasmussen. Okay. Before he got hurt last year, he was an impact player on the wing for the Red Wings. You throw a guy like JT Comfort on his line, a guy who's been through a rebuild, who's worked his way up the depth chart, up to the second line by his work ethic, by his intangibles, by his hockey IQ. I mean, if you can put JT Comfort's hockey IQ and if you could put David Perron's puck skills into Michael Rasmussen, I mean, for fuck's sake, man.
Yeah, I mean he's come along so nicely over the last couple seasons. I'm really impressed with how he's improved and hope he continues on that trajectory. So 90 points. Rass is your breakout player, and then 50-point plateau for Rass.
Book it.
Love it.
What about you, bud?
I'm gonna say 88 points. I'm gonna say 88 points to no playoffs.
Hey, we're doing prediction. We're not playing the prices right, dude. You know that.
I know that.
You can't undercut me like that.
No, I've had the 88 number, so I think they're eight points better this year.
Okay.
I mean, I do think they underperformed last season. I think they were maybe 2-win team better than they were. But you know, when you sack the 2 out of your 3 best players on the team at the deadline, you're gonna take a little bit of a hit.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm gonna say 88 points, no playoffs. My breakout player, I'm gonna go goalie Ville Husso.
Oh, okay.
Going off the board a little bit on this one. I just think that the defense in front of him was so bad at times last season, and the overusage from not having a true backup. Yeah. I think with Reimer and Lyon, whoever wins that backup competition is going to be able to spell him and keep him fresh. So I'm going to say 20, 23 wins for Husso this season.
Okay.
No, I'm going to say 25 wins for Husso this season. And we're going to go a 912 save percentage and a 2.9 goals against average. I'm going in on this one.
Wow. All right. Someone write that down.
Someone write that down and keep me to it. We will have to see if that comes true.
Yeah, dude. I love Husso. I just think like you said, I think it's a good thing that he signed these two guys to be supplemental goaltending, because I think we saw last year once he started to get in that 50 start range, he kind of started to fall off a little bit. And that could have been defense at the end of the year too. Like you said, that could be a part of it. But if we need, let's just say 30-ish games out of backup goaltending, like if Ville Husso can give you 50 quality starts, I think that's a really positive thing.
I think they're going to be right around the playoff mark. I think they will be playing meaningful games into April. And I think it'll come down to a late season series. I really do this year. I think that they play just overall better defense up and down the lineup. That's just going to help the goaltending, and we've added scoring. I just think all the way around this team is better, no matter how you slice it up. This team is way better than last year's team, and I think if they, even though we both have them not making the playoffs this year, I think that they are knocking on the door. And yeah, why not keep everybody together at the deadline, let them play together, build chemistry? Even if we don't make the playoffs this year, I would still re-sign Perron. We need winning players, culture guys that are going to help keep pushing this forward. Because if we don't, we're going to wind up being the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I just pulled it up. The last 5 games of the regular season for Detroit. Or actually, let's just do April, because it's 8 games total.
Okay.
It's kind of brutal. Tampa Bay on the road, New York Rangers at home, Buffalo Sabres at home, Washington Capitals at home, Pittsburgh Penguins on the road, Toronto Maple Leafs on the road, and then a home and home to end the year with the Montreal Canadiens. And if the Canadiens are towards the bottom of the division like everyone thinks. And if the Red Wings are only a couple points out when we get to those last couple games, that could be a favorable matchup. But if you shit the bed, if they come down to a position, dude, where it's like win those last 2 games and you're in, and they fuck it up somehow,
They pull a Penguins last year.
you'll be hearing about that shit all summer, dude. Like, and I just want to, if any Red Wings players are listening to this, look me in the eyes. You are strong enough to overcome that. If it comes down to that, it's the fucking Canadians, dude. You got it. Oh, man, that would be brutal. That would keep me up at night into July. I'd go to bed at night, and I would go to sleep, and my dreams would be filled with visions of ghosts of like Jakob Kindl and like fucking Ryan Sproul and like all these old players who never did us anything, and it's just them circling around. It's like, you're never gonna be good enough. And, oh man, it'll.
Gosh, that really does sound like a nightmare.
Yeah, no, I got very detailed. That's my bad.
No, please give us some insight into that beautiful mind there.
Oh man. Well, hey gang, we really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to come hang out with us and talk Red Wings hockey. We hope to be bringing you quality content all season long on a weekly basis. This has been a Hockey Town Hangout. I'm Matt. That's Forrest, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Hockey Town Hangout on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.